where you run into people who are that firmly opposed, people like say hello, and goodbye and move on. You don't take it personally and you don't get personal, but we only need 55 or 60%, and you're never going to get everybody. So I think the answer there is, now with some of these people, you may be able to persuade some of them that in fact a more effective way of reduction of this is to do it the sensible way. But I think what you've done, and you've accurately pointed to why we have some elements that you and I would think were irrational. But my answer in those cases is move on. Don't. You're not going to. I want to say this one other thing though. With politicians, even with politicians, by the way, who are themselves going to tell you that position, and may believe it or may just find it useful to repeat it, it still makes sense for you to let them know. One of the mistakes people make is, oh well, people say to me, all right, which committee is going to consider your bill? I want to write to those committee people. Please don't, because they'll throw your letters in the garbage. Most members of Congress will not answer people from outside, and you can't. Frankly, I don't have incoming email because I would get large numbers of emails from all over the country. Email has no geography. It doesn't have an area code, it doesn't have a zip code. I wouldn't be able to distinguish between the people in my district who I owe an answer to and people from elsewhere, and the kind of the good, they would just drive it out, the irrelevant. But even members of your own members, you got to write your own member of Congress, your own House and Senate members. Even if they disagree with you, you'll have an impact. I tell you this because not every bill gets voted on. Sometimes you will write to someone, and he or she will be opposed to you. There may be some very hard punitive bill coming up. But that person may well go to the leadership guy and say, hey, do we have to bring that up? In other words, if it comes up, they may vote against you. But they may also tell the leadership, don't bring that up. There are informal ways in which they influence the agenda. Or they may say, gee, maybe we can get this through and we'll do it on a voice vote, and I don't have to vote for it, we'll get it done. So focus on your own members. And again, where there's total disagreement, just move on to the next one. Yeah.
Hi, Representative Frank. Steve Bloom with High Times. First of all, I want to thank you for doing an interview with High Times a few years ago with John Getman. My question is regarding your comment about marches, protests, and demonstrations, that they are not effective. How has that been the case with the gay pride movement? There's been so much marches that have changed people's opinion about homophobia.
Oh, I've told people, I thought the last march on March was a great waste of time. There was a time when the gay marches were important. Gay people have had one difference in the discrimination we faced compared to people who were discriminated against based on race or disability, and that is, for a long time, the way gay people avoided discrimination was to hide. So we paid a high psychic price, but we didn't pay as much of a public price. It was the only minority group of whom the country was largely unaware, and it was important for a while. Visibility was important in that very special circumstance. I think we are beyond that now, and I have in fact been arguing for some time within the gay and lesbian, bisexual and transgender movement that if people enjoy marching, they should do it. They shouldn't think it has any political impact. We had this largest gay march in 1993, right in the midst of the debate on gays in the military. And the gay and lesbian people came and went and left no trace. And my colleagues would say to me, hey, I want to be with you, but God, I've heard from 200 people in my district against you, and nobody who's on your side. So it does apply to gays and lesbians. There was that special point at which it was important for people to be visible. It's also, by the way, very important for gays and lesbians to come out individually. Yes, sir. But I think that's more important, frankly, than the marchers. I think it is important for people to let others know who they are. But I do think that this point applies. In fact, I've developed it most frequently with regard to that. And let me give you another example. When you think about demonstrations, you probably think, if you're familiar with American history, of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was great with demonstrations. But you know what? Once the voting rights passed in the South, the emphasis of the civil rights movement shifted substantially from demonstrations to getting people to vote, because demonstrations is what people did when they couldn't vote. And once they could vote, that was much better.
Thank you.
I have heard that the prison guards union, correctional officers union, police union have been very much lobbying to keep drug laws the way they are, make them stronger. I have also heard that well, if marijuana were to be legalized, the alcohol and pharmaceutical companies would suffer. Maybe it's just conspiracy thinking on my point, but I'm just wondering, do you ever find that people from those industries lobby you on just basically that drug legalization would basically cut their own throats?
No, to be honest, I understand those arguments. I really do think we are suffering here from a cultural phenomenon rather than an economic one. First, as far as the police are concerned, I am regularly endorsed, and I'm proud to be, by the police union. I have never had the police say to me, keep the door closed. I think, frankly, these guys will enforce the law, but many of them will acknowledge privately the difficulties. Similarly with the correctional officers, I work with the federal correctional officers on some things because I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and I haven't heard it. And I can tell you this, as far as the pharmaceutical industry is concerned, the alcohol industry, they have issues on which they lobby. They want to protect the freedom to set drug prices or extend the terms of patents. The alcohol people want to cut taxes and have been reluctant to see the reduction in the drunk driving level, although they have tried to do that quietly. I've never seen any evidence of that, and I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is this sense that partly what you heard articulated before, this debauchery. Partly it is that, it's just, it's countercultural, and these druggies are people who are sort of anti-American. I don't think the economic interest of other people is a significant part of it at all.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us, Mr. Frank. My name is Leslie Miller. I'm from Maryland. I would like to know if you can give me any advice on a sure way to get a meeting with my representatives. I've had to go to some really strange steps just to meet with my representative, and I should feel that I should be able to call the office and make an appointment.
I must say, my own policy is to meet with anybody. The people who do my scheduling understand any member, anyone who lives in my district who wants to meet with me can meet with me. I can't guarantee him or her that the meeting will always be pleasant, but we'll have the meeting. The only answer I can give you is this. The answer is numbers. If you individually can't do it, then you say on behalf of 11 of your constituents, I want to meet with you.
Thank you.
I mean, at some point, everybody's got a number, and I think you'll probably hit it.
My name is Jim Miller. I'm here with my wife Cheryl Miller in the wheelchair laying down, and Jackie Rickard in the wheelchair sitting up from Wisconsin, and Gary Stork with her. I wanted to thank you, besides being here, that we didn't know 2 weeks ago if we were going to stay 4 days or 8, and we were able to reserve 4 more nights at the Best Western, 0.5 miles from Rayburn, the Longworth, and the Cannon office buildings. The last time we were there, I was barred from the Capitol grounds because my wife laid down in Bob Barr's doorway and was refused to leave until we made it. And we will be keeping appointments. They have appointments for 9 members of all the Wisconsin delegation, 4 with the Act 4.
You're from Wisconsin?
No, I'm from New Jersey. Sorry, and we're going to see Rob Andrews first because he changed his mind on this position last year because we were able to get a meeting with him. He, like you, will see people on important issues, even if they're not in his own district. And we just want to thank you for giving us the chance to go.
But again, focus on, you talked about laying down Bob Barr's office and obviously not being from Georgia. I just give you a piece of advice. When people who are fundamentally in disagreement with me go after me in those ways, it helps me raise money. It doesn't change my mind. I mean, dramatizing the opposition of people who oppose you isn't very effective. It may, Jesse Helms and Ted Kennedy have probably been worth $100 million to each other over the years. In terms of dueling fundraising. I really urge you to, I understand the frustration. Focus on the people in your area. It doesn't just have to be your own member. If once you've done that, move around the rest of the state. I mean, there are people who'll be running for governor or for some broader office. But
we kept a lot of appointments that trip first. That was just the way to end the trip, and we did. It wasn't by itself. We keep appointments from.
But it's very, as I said, the focus has to be on those people. And then look, particularly people who are in this situation where they're being deprived of medication. I hope people aren't reluctant to ask your friends and